So if you can share your key challenges fundraising and your key learnings along the way.
Good question.
Yeah, fundraising. Yeah, fundraising.
Did you block it all out, or just...
No. Like fundraising is always challenging for people like us, just because most of the money we try to raise are from the States, from Europe. We're trying to raise for an African market. So for people who don't have a understanding, we have to create that shared understanding for them to be able to understand our business. And sometimes that's really difficult. Sometimes one of the key lessons learned for me for fundraising the first time was, we wasted time with people who were not aligned, but they were just interested in talking. And because they were interested in talking, I probably assumed that there was a real interest there. But being able to distinguish people that just want to talk forever versus people and waste my time versus people that I should say, hey, is there a clear interest? Let's continue the conversations rather than just having meaningless conversations time and time again. So for me, that's quite one of the key lessons learned. I think in the end, having really clear goals about the type, I think in as much as you're trying to get people's money, you want to make sure that you are vetting them as they're vetting you. Because I think that particularly if you're fundraising, you are committing to working together with people for quite a number of time period. So there should be definitely alignment in between you and who you get the money from. And I think that's something I think we did really well, that everybody that's given us money, we took their money just because we feel like very strongly about them as they felt about us. And going forward, I feel like that even becomes more important because raising money for Sub-Saharan Africa is it's usually like a long road. There's not going to be any easy exits like you would typically have in the States. So you need people who are able to ride with you when things are great and when things are not. And so that's something that I feel like sometimes as entrepreneurs, we feel like we don't have any options, that we just take money from whoever wants to give you money. But I think that having the right partners can make your life easier as you go forward. And I think the last thing is also about like narrative. I think one of the things that helped us is how we're able to change the narrative of what we say. We actually really struggle with our own narrative because we work in a space that is so huge but also quite specific. And so creating a narrative about what we're trying to do is quite important. And even I don't think we've nailed it down yet to a T, but I think that having that nice narrative about yourself is also like helps a lot. It can convince people that you know what you're doing. So I think these are some of the key lessons.
Yeah, definitely. I think, yeah, the point about, I think we learned pretty quickly what types of signals we were getting from folks. And as Shoga said, there were some people that we had really, really long drawn out conversations. And now looking back, I'm like, okay, I should have known that this was probably never going to happen. And there are people out there that are kind of like ghost VCs or that are just in the information gathering phase. And that's totally fine, but your time is also very valuable. Your time and your knowledge is really valuable. So I think for us, it was like looking for those types of signaling questions of, when we got people that just clearly had like no frame of reference yet for what it meant to run a startup in Africa or run a startup in Nigeria specifically. That was, I think, a sign for us to say like, okay, maybe the process and the time it's going to take for us to get this person to be comfortable investing on the continent is just going to be too much, and it's going to be a long road. That being said, I think we were the first healthcare investment for one of the VCs that we worked with, but they were very familiar with the African continent. So I think there are times when you can be the first of a certain type of investment in a portfolio, and it is okay. And particularly if you're working with a fund or an organization that is clearly very eager to learn and is showing lots of interest in the type of work that you're doing or have done something for a similar type of target market or in a similar geography. I think that really helps. And then for us, I think it was useful for us to know where we were willing to give up some ground and which items on a term sheet were negotiable and which pieces we felt really strongly about. And I think for that, we had a lot of help from our extremely expensive but very knowledgeable lawyers, as well as from like the Legatum Center, working with talking to other entrepreneurs that have gone through kind of the first big fundraise process. We were also part of Techstars in 2018, so that was a really great resource for us. But really talking as a founding team about, okay, which are the things that we really are like non-negotiables for us, and which are the pieces where we're okay giving a little bit here. And for us, I think the biggest thing was around control. We felt like, you know, we're still pretty early on in our journey. We think it's important to be able to kind of make decisions and to make little pivots in the company relatively easily at this point. So that was one thing that we were particularly careful about, was, you know, making sure that we as the founding team will still be able to make those decisions easily. And we have our lead investor who now sits on our board, who is a Nigerian-based investor who has been amazing and incredibly supportive. I think, you know, we had a lot of long and sometimes difficult discussions in those early phases of conversation, which I think were really important for us to get through, because by the time we landed on that kind of final term sheet that we were signing, we were both very much on the same page. And since that point, he's just been a huge supporter of our work, and it's been really helpful to have someone who like intimately understands the local context and ecosystem. So I think also thinking really critically about, you know, who might be coming onto your board and what that relationship will look like, and if there's someone who can really be an advocate for you and a supporter for you as you move forward.